Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we continue with the compilation videos which are aimed at people who are working or people who are driving or people who just have a heck of a lot of time and want something on in the background. Today's compilation is our last 5 I Don't Work Here Lady videos all in one place. Let's jump right in. Our first story today comes to us from Lucky the Lurker. Karen mistakes me for a bank employee, proceeds to attempt to rob the bank, and gets arrested. Let's jump right in. Background. About 20 years ago, I worked for a company that made software for banks and credit unions. 2 smaller regional banks merged, and we were called in to upgrade all the branches for the same version of software and to point the network to the new consolidated bank. This happens after hours, so as to not interfere with day-to-day operations. The whole process took several hours on site at each bank, so we were sure we would have plenty of time to roll things back if anything went wrong. We started a few hours before the bank closed. This would give us time to fix anything before the bank opened the next day. The process started with a meeting to go over the plan for the branch, so the bank staff, some of who would be helping with the process because my team doesn't have complete access to the bank systems. This is a small bank. There's 4 offices, a conference room, and space for like 5 tellers up front. It turned out it was payday for some large employer or something, but just as I started my meeting with the branch manager, the 2 staff from my company, and the 2 bank employees who would be opening the bank the following day, the bank starts to get really busy. The meeting lasts about 30 minutes, and all the while the line and waiting area is filling up. So I rush through the details for the bank manager and release him. Then, the 2 opening staff. I leave the details for my team for last. My team knew the process, they just needed to know what computers to start on first. Anyway, I dismissed the bank staff and they go to help the rush up front, and I continue my meeting with my team and then send them out to get some food since it looks like the bank might not close on time anyway. I head over to the bank manager's office and immediately a woman ducks under the rope line and makes straight for the office and tries to follow me inside. I didn't see her step out of line, so I at first thought maybe she was a bank employee. As soon as I turned around, she said something like, "It's about damn time. I've been waiting for half an hour." This was BS because we started the meeting at 4:30 and it wasn't even 5 yet. I tried to tell her she was mistaken. I don't work at the bank. But she cut me off, not even paying attention to what I was saying. She plopped herself down in one of the chairs and said, "I need to make a withdrawal." I replied, "Sorry, I can't help you with that. You need to wait in line." "No, I've already waited for an hour. I know you can do it. You've done it before." She slaps her ID and bank card on the desk and says, "Just open the damn drawer and give me $2,000. I can't. I couldn't even finish explaining I don't work there. "BS, you've done it before. Give me $2,000. I can't. That's it." At this point, she's raised her voice and is now standing. I assumed she was going to leave, and I went to open the door, but she pushed me back and yelled, "I'm not leaving this office until you give me $2,000. She then picked up a screwdriver out of the toolkit sitting on the desk and starts prying at the desk drawer. I push her back and she swings at me with the screwdriver. I step back, but she scratches my arm, tearing my shirt, and goes back to prying at the drawer. I've had it at this point. I'm thinking she's nuts and I need to do something. I look out of the office and it looks like everyone is busy and think maybe they didn't notice her yelling. It looks like she's not making any progress on the desk. It's too sturdy. I try a calmer approach and try to get her attention. She stops for a moment and looks at me like she forgot I was there. "Are you gonna get me my money or what?" she snapped. "I'm not an employee of the bank." "BS, you were just in the meeting with the other employees." "Yes, but..." "Then get me my money or get out of my way," she interrupted before pushing me again. I finally had it. I looked out the window and it seemed like all the bank employees were calm and quiet. I thought, F if I'm going to stand here and watch her rob the bank. She was a big woman, but I played hockey against bigger, so even if she had a few pounds on me, I was pretty sure I could at least slow her down. I took a step back, brought my shoulder down, then with a step and a short lunge, I shoulder checked her into the brick wall behind her. She smacked her head on the wall, gave a short whoomph as I knocked the wind out of her, and then she collapsed to the floor unconscious. I watched her suspiciously for a moment, thinking that was easier than I thought. Why didn't I do that earlier? Then I thought maybe I hurt her, so I knelt down to check on her. She was breathing. I shouldn't move her. The screwdriver flew across the office, so I just stepped over her and walked out into the bank. About that time, I heard sirens, lots of them. A short while later, some police came into the bank. Having just assaulted a woman, leaving her unconscious, I put my hands up. The police walked over, looked at me, then walked into the office. I turned around and the bank staff were pointing at the office where I just left. Evidently, they'd triggered the silent alarm as soon as she yelled at me to give her money. They moved the other customers to the conference room and were following protocols to comply and not interfere. The end result was she woke up to being handcuffed. She was seen by an EMT briefly before being arrested for armed robbery, kidnapping, and assault. The screwdriver from the toolkit was taken as evidence, and we teased my tech for the next few years. You get your screwdriver back yet? She came in for $2,000 and left with 5 to 10. She spent 4 years in prison. As an assault victim in that state, they notified me when she got out. This'll be one of the easiest bank robberies these cops will ever have. They walk in, the perp is unconscious on the floor, they check that she's still breathing, apply the cuffs, and say, well, that was easy. Now, I do want to remind people that you shouldn't get involved in a situation like this. If somebody's robbing a bank or a store or whatever, regardless of whether you work there or you're just there purchasing something yourself, do not get involved. Comply and give them what they want, and chances are you'll be able to walk out of there later once they're already long gone. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from Gallifrey Girl Dusk. Stranger demands I watch her children while she shops. Let's jump right in. When I was 13, I was aimlessly wandering around looking at random stuff at a retail store. That for this store I will call Bullseye, waiting for my mom to finish picking out some tennis shoes. A lady who looked to be in her late 40s came stomping up to me. She has a horde of 5 kids, looked to be about ages 3 to 10, swarming around her plus a baby in her arms. I have zero clue what she was saying. I don't understand pterodactyl screeching. I started backing away with my hands up, like she had a weapon pointed at me, when she tried to place the baby in my arms. She just started screaming, "Manager! I need a manager!" Until some employees walked up to us. She got this smirk of what I can only describe as pure joy on her face and pointed at me. You'd think she was identifying a criminal the way she was acting. This employee almost made me drop my baby. I tried to drop my children off for childcare, and she refused to take my children and wouldn't take my baby from me. There isn't a limit for how many children you can drop off posted anywhere, so I don't want to hear it. I will not be discriminated against just because I have so many beautiful children. My jaw was on the floor at this point. I was 13, looked even younger, was in the middle of my emo phase, was in the middle of the music section looking at CDs, and like I said, was in Bullseye. What about any of that would make someone think I was some kind of in-store daycare worker? The employees' faces ranged from utterly confused to trying really hard not to laugh. When they all just stared at her for a few seconds without saying anything, the mom started back up with her bird mating calls again. I could make out bits and pieces. She's going to sue. She had to come find me because I wasn't where I was supposed to be in the childcare area. I look unprofessional. She doesn't want her kids watched by someone who looks like a devil worshiper anyway, and some more threats involving her husband and church. The manager finally spoke up at this point. He first explained that I don't work here, then informed her that they don't provide any kind of childcare. She flipped out again, accusing them of lying. I actually figured out what she had been doing and explained to the manager. This store had a little mini arcade room near the entrance and the snack counter where you can buy popcorn and soft pretzels, stuff like that in case this isn't normal for Bullseye stores in other areas. She had been dropping her kids off in the little arcade room and expected the nearby employee to watch her kids while she shopped. The employee was only nearby because the room was right by the front door. This room is tiny. It has like 4 games in it. I don't know how all of her kids even fit in there. Apparently, this was her first time coming here since she had had her baby. You'd think she would have been horrified or at least embarrassed once the truth came out, but nope, she just started yelling more and accusing the manager of trying to cover up for me since I had obviously abandoned the kids I was supposed to be watching. She said she was going to call the police and report me and the store for child endangerment, and I was so getting fired. The manager asked her to follow them so that they could take care of the situation, and while she refused at first because she wanted to be there when I was fired, she left with him when he finally lost his temper and yelled, "Ma'am, she does not work here, leave her alone." The other employees took me up to a register and offered me a $100 gift card and a lot of apologies. I tried to turn it down. It wasn't their fault, and I got a great story out of it. She insisted though. From what I gathered from her, the crazy lady had apparently said a lot of horrible things about me while shrieking that I couldn't understand. My guess is that they were worried my parents would sue them or something. They called my mom to the front of the store and explained the situation to her, then gave me my gift card. Luckily for them, rather than threaten a lawsuit, my mom just laughed her butt off the whole time. I really thought she was going to pass out from lack of oxygen. She was laughing so hard at my painful experience, she could barely breathe. She was super bummed that she had missed the whole thing. In the end, as we were walking out of the store, my mom looked at me in all my emo gear and said, "Who in the hell would try to put their newborn in your arms?" A complete stranger whose sleeves literally say "cut my wrist" and "black my eyes." I used to buy blank shirts and Sharpie my favorite song lyrics all over them, laugh out loud. I was so cool. In conclusion, I don't know how the situation with the Mother of the Year ended, but the next time we went to Bullseye, there was a huge new sign saying, "Do not leave children unattended," by the doorway to the arcade room. It was in the exact same spot as the old sign that said the exact same thing. Only difference was that this sign was about 4 times as big. I swear my mom was hoping to run into Mrs. "Hey stranger, take my infant," because she all of a sudden needed to go to Bullseye all the time for a little while. So correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not from the states where this story likely took place, but isn't that child abandonment if you just leave them in the arcade where there's nobody to look them over, especially with really young children? I'm sure we have a lawyer in the viewership somewhere. I'd love to see your comments down below. Our last story today comes to us from Ong Noi. I didn't spend 7 years in medical school to fix your crap. Let's jump right in. Working for a manufacturer of things that were not medical related, I got a voicemail from an MD screaming about some piece of hardware. "Your stupid device doesn't work, and your voicemail box is not configured." This was on my personal voicemail, which is configured. No phone number, no name, no idea where the call originated from. The only thing I was certain of is that we were not in the business of making medical instruments of any kind. A few similar messages landed in my Vmail in the ensuing week, until I finally managed to live answer one of these calls. After calming the caller down, I pieced together what was going on. The medical device in question was a bit of office automation, nothing patient-facing, thank goodness. The caller described having trouble with this device and calling the phone number on the leaflet that came in the shipping carton with said device. That phone number was misprinted, and thousands of these devices were shipped with a bogus tech support number. The number printed on the paper was one of my 500 office phone numbers, coincidentally unused with no actual physical phone and no voicemail box. Those few callers that managed to leave me messages simply pounded 0 until my employer's admin assistants, there were 3 sharing call answering duties, answered. They apparently didn't question why IT support requests were coming in on an outside line, they merely forwarded the call to my number. Until the day I ripped that phone system off the wall. That phone number still had an outgoing message in my malodorous dulcet tone. "You've reached not the company you think you called. Please note that we do not make the device for which you are attempting to get support. That company misprinted their documentation and gave you the wrong number. For support on your device, please call Medical Devices Company on the other side of town at numbers." That was a fun call with their IT department. I decided I should speak tech to tech rather than try to explain it all to their marketing or quality staff. A few Tales from Tech Support quality anecdotes were shared while we brainstormed the solution on my end and while she started rattling cages in her own shop. I'm reminded of a friend's parents many years ago who had had the same phone number for about 15 years, but then they started receiving phone calls of people wanting to order pizza. It turns out a new pizza place had opened in town and their number was one off from the number they'd had for 15 years. I can tell you for sure they didn't have that number for 16 years. Our next story today comes to us from OKCow599. Security thinks I am his relief. Let's jump right in. I work for a pretty large security company that has a contract with the absolute biggest employer in the city. This is where I work security for. I also live in a security protected apartment complex. Plot twist, it is protected by the same company I work for. My apartment was right next to the clubhouse. This was where security parked. Some background information. The company as a whole uses tan shirts for supervisors and white shirts for the officers, but the specific contract for this employer dictated that supervisors wore white shirts and officers wore blue. I am a supervisor. To top it off, my apartment complex is only a 5-minute drive, 15-minute walk from where I work. On this one particular day, I had just gotten off at 8 a.m. from a 12-hour shift and have exactly 8 hours before I had to be back in for another 12-hour shift. I also had to deal with an employee of the company I protect trying to start fistfights and punching me in the face just 20 minutes before my shift ended. So I was already on edge. I pulled my car up to the front of my apartment and, being the friendly introvert I am, waved to the security guard who was looking directly at me and then went towards my front door. As I was moving through the big keyring to get my key out, my shoulder is grabbed and I am violently turned around. Still haven't been able to settle down from the incident at work. I put the guy who grabbed me over the railing and on his head. He wasn't injured or anything. It took him a minute to get up though, as he went a full 180 in under a second. When I realized it was the security guard of the complex, I walked over and tried to help him up. He fired off at me. "You aren't allowed in the residents' apartments. I'll have you fired for this." Now, I have seen this guy a few times when I went to check the mail, but he seemed not to recognize me. I can fully understand. I see 500 people walk in and out where I work, and I never bother learning names, unless 1. I work with you every day, 2. You are one of the big shots who actually can fire me that instant, and 3. You cause trouble frequently. Needless to say, I can understand the lack of recognition. I don't work here, I live here. "BS," he immediately responded once he got back on his feet. "I know our uniform. You're the new guy supposed to be relieving me." He grabbed my arm and tried to show me where the car was. "Remove your hand from my arm or I will remove it from yours." I was already done and looking at the most 6 hours of sleep, still in flight mode. I would have apologized later for this line, but spoilers, he's already on the radio calling his supervisor to come deal with me. An hour later, the property manager is coming in to open the clubhouse. She stops, smiles, and waves and comes over. "Hi, didn't think you would be out at this time." The property manager and I were pretty cool with each other. I am skilled enough to make most repairs myself. I am never late with rent, and once ran out to the pool to perform CPR for a resident. She also knew from the inspection yesterday that I was going to be pulling a messed up 12 on, 8 off, 12 on couple days. Before I can explain anything, the other guard butted in. He was trying to go into a resident's apartment. I got my supervisor on the way. He won't be doing it again here. Ladies and gentlemen, I turned him upside down. The property manager, a nice sweet older woman, was about to turn this idiot inside out. Before she could say anything, the officer's supervisor drove up and asked what was going on. She cut the officer off and told him, "This fool is holding one of our residents hostage outside his apartment. I want him out of this complex 5 minutes ago, and he will not be coming back here ever." The supervisor just gave the officer a dismissive thumb back motion. He had no leeway to argue. The contractee can always tell who not to allow on any site, even our own employees. Yeah, he was fired on the spot. And this is not the end, folks. Remember how I said we worked for the same company? The corporate big shots decided to rehire him and send him to the largest employer they guard and give him a second shot. He arrived for an interview at my facility where I had hiring power. The interview went all of 3 questions. 1. Are you going to keep anyone out that is supposed to be in here? 2. Are you going to ask for credentials for anyone you don't know trying to enter? 3. Are you going to grab anyone? He said no, and I accepted him to the facility. He's been working a year here now and is one of my best access control officers on site. Even to the point, someone claimed he let someone in that wasn't authorized, and I laughed instantly. So the guy made a huge mistake, but he was able to redeem himself and turned into one of the best employees. So it goes to show you that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes people deserve a second chance. Our next story today comes to us from Spotlight Desire. No, I won't clean your table, but you can talk to my manager. She won't either. Let's jump right in. A couple years ago, I was working for a theme park as a live entertainment support tech. As you can tell by my username, I'm a lighting stagehand by trade. This particular story takes place on my second day of work after returning from a 4-year hiatus. We were all working hard to get the summer show up and on its feet and ready for tech in a couple weeks, so we took a longer lunch break than normal, low-level staff like myself and our department supervisors at a pizza place across the street. Now, the way we dressed for this position was fairly distinctive among our staff, but I guess less so when you leave the park. We wear show blacks, all black clothing, down to socks and undershirt. Some stickers even insist you wear black underwear. The black shirts, button-up work shirts we had, as well as the ball caps several of us were wearing, had the name of the theme park and entertainment in silver in less than a missable font, on top of which we had name tags with the company logo and our tool belts on our hips. The pizza place, however, had shorter sleeves black polos for managers or t-shirts. Through a similar black theme, they were not at all alike. Anyway, sorry for the long setup, but it's important you know how unbelievable this situation was. So I'm making my way through the buffet, grabbing pizza and some salad, when I hear it. The impatient shriek of, "Excuse me." I'm focused on my lunch, as we are still on a time crunch after all. Naturally, I assumed this woman just wanted me to step aside, so I politely moved. I heard a distinct huff, then felt a not too gentle tap on my shoulder. I turned around confused. Finally, I've managed to get someone's attention. All these tables are filthy, and I want you to clean one for me. I blinked for a minute, about to utter the words you all expect. I got as far as, I don't. I know you're on your lunch break, but you can stuff your face in a while. You have a paying customer here with no place to sit. Am I just supposed to eat standing like an animal? Yes, she actually said that. I point to the logo on my work shirt. She doesn't even look. But nonetheless, I say, "Sorry, I can't clean your table for you. There's always someone at the register. Maybe they can." "You're right here, right now. Why should I have to wait for someone else to do your job?" At this point, I just sigh and begin to walk off. Karen shrieks, "I want to talk to your manager." As it so happens, guess who was sitting at the table with our staff? Suddenly, I get an idea that probably belongs on malicious compliance. I flag my manager over. "Hey, Spotlight, what's going on?" "This woman said she wants to speak to my manager. Why would this lazy sack of crap isn't doing her job? I want you to tell her to clean me a table now." Spotlight doesn't work for the pizza place, neither do I. What the F is wrong with people these days? No one ever gives good service anymore. My manager, seeing just what I'd been putting up with, went off on Karen. She didn't yell and was very controlled, to the point it was scary. I wish I could remember exactly what she said, but I had wandered out of earshot after she told me to take my food and sit down. All I know is Karen finally seemed to get the message. Here's the best part, I don't know exactly why, but Karen left without ever eating a single slice of pizza she paid for. My manager ended up giving me some cash to cover my lunch after all the crap, so thanks Karen, I guess. There's a commenter down below that calls the all-black clothing the ninja suit, which is like the universal employment standard, so wherever you go, people might think that you actually work there. Probably not something you want to do if you'd like to remain anonymous or not be bugged by a bunch of Karens. When Karen asks if she's supposed to eat standing like an animal, it should have been a response of, "Actually, that's a great idea, Karen. It completely solves your problem." Our next story today comes to us from Davot K. Kindly old man in the UK hospital. Let's jump right in. This is not a Karen story, but a kind one. I have read this subreddit for a while, and I didn't even remember I had my own IDontWorkHereLady until I read one about scrubs. Let's set the stage. It's over 10 years ago, and I am a college student working abroad for the summer in London, UK. As it happens, the pretty young gal I was dating in college was studying abroad in Barcelona, Spain, so we plan a trip that happens to be around my birthday. I show up, we tour the city, and overall have a grand old time for a few days beforehand. In fact, I was able to meet Picasso's son while there during an exhibit she worked on. I was an artist at the time and it was really special of her. She really was a gem. On my actual birthday, the day before my return flight, we trooped through Park Güell with a bottle of wine and picnic for the day. High on love and a bit of wine, I ignored the nagging sick feeling coming on, but after only an hour or so, I'm really not feeling well. The caring lass goes full medic mode, and fortunately, many helpful drugs are available without prescription in Spain. Whatever she gave me was enough to get me on my flight the next morning, but as things often do, I find during flight, things take a turn for the worse. I don't even remember getting through Heathrow Airport, but somehow I got home, but in dire straits. Fortunately, I had some flatmates who very quickly pushed me right out into another taxi to the hospital. I showed up with a 105 degree, 41 Celsius if I recall correctly, fever. They pinprick the hell out of me for blood and provide fluids, severely dehydrated. I must have arrived midday, but they admit me overnight to monitor. They had no idea what I was suffering from and never found out. Thankfully, by nightfall, I was feeling much closer to life than death. Overnight in the UK hospital, I am on lazy boy sofa chair with an IV drip in a room of probably 8 to 10 patients of all age, sex, color, and creed. A guy across from me had tried to kill himself with pills. I hear a doctor discussing this behind a privacy curtain. Next to me is a girl who does not speak very good English, but later gives me her number, maybe because of what happens next. Midnight. I can't sleep much overnight. The chair doesn't lie flat, the room is quiet but somewhat tense. This is before I had a smartphone, so I didn't have anything to occupy myself besides maybe Tetris. I took to quietly walking about. Enter gentleman. This giant, 2 meters solid, 6'4" skinny old gentleman gets up and approaches me near the doorway. "Excuse me, sir, but where is the bathroom?" "It's out this door and right over here to your left," pointing. "Many thanks, many thanks." Time passes and I'm up again. There must have been a nurse in a corner or someone in and out occasionally, but inevitably, the same gentleman comes back over to me where I am standing. Gentleman asks for the bathroom, but says something about his wife also, and I realize he doesn't seem to see very well. This time I take his hand. They must have removed my IV drip at some point in the night and walk him to the bathroom. Before this happens a third time, someone else asks me something seemingly trivial about when they might get discharged, and I say I'll ask the nurse. I don't think anything of it. The third time gentleman is up for the bathroom, gentleman says something like, "What kind of young doctor are you?" Many thanks, and I politely inform him that I am not a doctor, but he doesn't seem to notice. Something seems off, so I walk back and notify nurse. She informs me that gentleman is suffering from dementia. I panic. Gentleman is alone in the bathroom, but nurse just nods that gentleman will be fine. He is high functioning and it's an understandable mistake considering. I look quizzically at her and she gestures at my body. I look down and realize I am wearing a light green V-neck t-shirt I got in Spain and light blue pants. I am virtually a shoo-in for hospital staff. Oh, I hope gentleman is okay wherever he is, and the guy across and the girl, I hope they're all okay wherever they are. OP, you're just a really nice, kind-hearted person. I mean, a lot of people wouldn't go out of their way to help somebody, especially somebody who comes to them with the same request over and over. I really like how you didn't go with the normal flow of these stories though, and told us what you were wearing right at the end of the story. That was a pretty neat revelation. Our next story today comes to us from Elysium90. I haven't worked here in over a decade. Let's jump right in. I, 31 female, used to work at a particular chain dollar store with a red and yellow label. I was the manager of one of these stores from ages 18 to 20 years old, so over a decade ago. This store was located in a very rural upstate New York town with a population of less than 1,000 people and has remained one of very few choices for home goods and food in this town without traveling more than half an hour into the larger town nearby. While I managed this store, I met Helen. Helen is an elderly woman who had worked for the company for over 20 years when I worked there. She's a very mild-mannered and chippy lady who enjoys running the cash register and organizing any display that doesn't have a planogram. I love Helen. I have kept in touch with her over Facebook as I put myself through college and moved many states away. Helen still works for this store. Sorry for the novel, but I feel like all of this is relevant information. Fast forward to last week. I'm in New York visiting my husband's family, his sibling had a baby, and decide I would trek into my old town to visit Helen at work and bring her Dunkin' Donuts coffee, a ritual I held while working there. I also wanted to take her to lunch on her break, so I arrived at the store and of course, because they have always been understaffed, she's swamped. Out of the 2 potential registers open, Helen is the sole cashier ringing people out. Typically, it's only 1 staff, 1 manager on duty, and I have no idea where her boss is. I wander the aisles looking for the manager to let him know she needs backup. As I'm making my way through the store to pop my head into the back room where the bathrooms are, I'm stopped by a shopping cart pushed purposely into my path. "Thank God you're here," says the woman, who nearly hit me with her cart. I let out a startled, nervous chuckle as I stare at her face, desperately searching for something familiar to jog my memory. Nothing. I remember absolutely nothing about this lady, but she seems to remember me. "I'm in a hurry and I need you to open that second register. I would think by now you would know better than to have Helen manning the registers alone on a Friday afternoon. She's too darn slow." "Ma'am, I'm trying to find the manager right now to send her back up." "BS, you're the manager. I remember you. Don't lie to me." I lose my collective crap and burst into laughter. What is all I managed to get out? "Girl, everybody knows you run this godforsaken store. Go help her." I look down at my shirt to make sure I'm not wearing red, the uniform, nope, and say to this lady, "I haven't worked for this crappy company in over a decade, ma'am. I'm just here to see Helen. Now get your effing cart out of my way so I can get her back up." She pauses for a second, tense like she was about to scream, then exhales in an animated fashion and slowly pulls her cart back. "All right, but you definitely know how to run the register." I push the double doors open to the back room and say, "I do not work here." Thankfully, I ran nearly straight into Helen's boss. He quickly went up front to check her out. I still have no idea who the hell she was, and I remember most of my regulars. It threw me for such a loop. Helen and I had a great lunch. She swears she's never seen that lady before either. One thing I love about this story is that after she's talked with this woman and let her know that she hasn't worked there for 10 years, she just walks right through the back door. That was like an, "I don't work here, but I still have privileges and I'm not helping you." Our next story today comes to us from Blackfire Phoenix. Bizarre "I don't work here" situation, plus being way too high equals extreme confusion. Let's jump right in. I've been trying to find the free time to write and post this while it's still fresh in my mind. This was the most bizarre "I don't work here" moment that left me completely dumbfounded, especially since I was accidentally too high to deal with it, laugh out loud. But I knew immediately that I had to share it here. It's not like the usual stories on this sub. I felt it was worth sharing purely because of how strange it was. So this happened Sunday before last. My husband, Corey, and I were invited by one of our best friends, April, on a trip to the city where she had attended college. It's still in our state, but it's about a 2-hour drive from the rural wasteland where we live. Specifically, April set up the trip so she could introduce my husband to a friend she had made at her job while living there. I had met Brent, not real name, once before, and seeing how much Corey and Brent had in common, I immediately agreed with her that the two of them would become instant friends if introduced. Sure enough, when we arrived on Saturday and we met up with Brent, the two guys hit it off famously, and we had a great time. We checked into our hotel later, and the four of us ended up staying up way too late that night, playing video games and watching stuff. This is relevant because, even with our late checkout, the next morning we overslept and ended up having to rush in order to check out on time. Due to the rush, I ended up just keeping the oversized shirt I'd worn to bed on and changed into my swim trunks. I'm a woman, but I typically prefer trunks over bikinis. Since I hadn't worn them the day before, the hotel pool had sadly been closed, and we were headed for a nature trail, then home anyway. Plus, they were the only shorts that I had packed and the best option in the 90-degree weather. With our plans, there was no reason for me to really care about my appearance. Keep in mind for later that my trunks were a bright blue and my big comfy shirt had characters from an anime on it. I knew I looked like a hobo who had wandered into this quite fancy hotel lobby as we checked out. Still, I didn't care cause we were leaving, or so I thought. We said goodbye to Brent, who had to head to work, and I assumed we were heading out as well. Turns out that, in the chaos of packing and getting our crap out on time, April hadn't been able to finish her breakfast, and this hotel lobby has a second story, just for lounging guests. April plopped down in a comfy chair and pulled out her food, and Corey and I awkwardly sat on the couch next to her, feeling like we shouldn't be there after checkout, though I'd seen people at other hotels do this in the past. Now, before I continue, I need to describe the unique layout of this hotel. It's built on the slope of a large hill. The main lobby led out to the main parking lot at the bottom of the slope. The second floor lobby, which basically looked like a giant version of my grandma's living room, was level with the top of the hill and had another parking lot for the guests on the second floor. Still, to be able to get into the second story lobby, you would need a key card for your room. But apparently one of those doors was broken, which is also important to the encounter I would soon have. So after April finished eating, both her and my husband head down to the main lobby to use the restrooms. This left me alone in this massive lounge because no employees were stationed on the second floor. Now is a good time to mention that I was out of my mind high on a couple of Delta 8 edibles. It was a complete accident on my part, I swear, laugh out loud. I had woken up at around 7 a.m. in a lot of pain. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so I had groggily gotten myself an edible to help ease me off and get back to sleep for a little longer. Well, again, due to the rushing when we all got up 3 hours later, I forgot that I'd already had an edible since I didn't feel anything from that first gummy. I assumed, since I fell back asleep before it fully kicked in, my metabolism slowed down and the high was lying in wait for the worst possible timing. So, deciding I wanted to feel a relaxing but coherent high on the nature trail, I popped another gummy. The high didn't kick in until right before they headed to the restrooms, but evidently, both edibles kicked in at once. I was on another plane of existence. And now I finally arrive at the I don't work here encounter. I started wandering around while waiting for April and Corey to return, and I found myself in front of a lectern or podium, which had the schedule for the photography convention we had briefly seen being held there the previous day. I'm extremely into photography, so I stood there reading the entire schedule to see what fun activities they had done at the con. My back was facing the doors that only guests are supposed to have access to, and it was dead silent. Then, suddenly, 2 loud bangs scared the living hell out of my insanely high brain, and I jumped around to see an older, yet surprisingly fit-looking man, probably in his 50s, yanking on the handle for each of the locked doors. There were 4 doors in total. No one had come through this second-story lobby since we had been there either, so his sudden appearance unnerved my toasted brain more. I had instinctually started to step towards the doors to help him in, but paused as I realized that he probably wasn't a guest if he was just aggressively yanking on the locked doors. I watched as this man cursed at each door while pulling the handles multiple times, unsure of what to do and still scared because I was way too high to be dealing with someone I didn't know by myself. The man went to yank the final door handle as violently as he had the other 3, only for it to open unexpectedly and almost hit him in the face from the force of his pull. I was now panicking because this man was obviously very agitated and I was still the only person in the room he had possibly just broken the door off of to get into. I did the only thing I could think of to avoid him and turned back to the podium, this time only pretending to read the convention schedule. Irrational fear that he might be a killer also crossed my mind, so I just kept thinking, please walk past me, go downstairs, and check in like a normal person. Ignore me, please. It felt like an eternity passed, and I hadn't even heard him come up behind me, so when his loud ahem broke the silence, I jumped yet again and spun around. This guy was maybe 4 feet away from me, possibly closer. He was close enough to me that I could smell his sweat. His expression was disconcerting as hell as he stared wide-eyed at me. He looked confused, angry, excited, and basically just insane all at once, and I had no idea what he was expecting me to do. Is he mad I didn't open the door for him? I thought to myself. When I said nothing, that's when crap got weird. He started to kind of blubber at me loudly while looking me up and down. Nothing coming from his mouth could be comprehended as words. The only thing that I was able to pick up on was that he sounded really embarrassed or confused. He wasn't speaking another language, I'm almost positive of that. I can't do it justice in writing, but it sounded like a string of ta-ta sounds that you'd hear in a comedy sketch making fun of really fancy, rich British men. You know, like holding wine glasses and chortling with one another in a deep babbling way. Several seconds passed with him making these deep blubbering sounds, and he pointed at me, then the podium, then the hallway to the hotel rooms, and my brain finally rebooted and started processing enough to squeak out the words, I don't work. The man cut me off with one curt, extra loud babble, and I shrunk back a little as he stared at me silently for a couple of seconds after. I'm convinced at this point that he may have a mental disability of some sort and isn't able to speak clearly, or he's possibly having tics. I wanted to help him, but he was absolutely terrifying me. I wanted to tell him that he just needs to head down the stairs to the main lobby, but his stare felt like it was literally penetrating my soul. I despise being that high, especially in public, and this was sending me spiraling. Then he suddenly says, very, very quietly, "Oh, okay, so, his sudden complete change in tone and pitch, and the fact that he just spoke so clearly, made me question reality in that moment. I stood there, still not knowing what else to say, so I ended up repeating, "Sorry, I don't work here," while gesturing to the stairs. This causes him to quickly move towards the glass doors that separate the top of the stairs and the lobby, and his face is burning dark crimson. I can't tell if he's angry or embarrassed or what, so I just wait for him to either go through the doors down to the main lobby or say something else. In a very clear voice, but said very quickly with what I could now tell was obvious embarrassment, he repeats, "You don't work here." He stated it. There was no question in his voice. Then continued, "I go down here, check-in is down there." I nod. Without another word, he furiously jerks the stairwell door open, just like he had with the guest entrance door, and practically ran down the stairs. All I could do was stand there, looking down at the main lobby desk, thinking over and over again, what the F just happened? I see him approach the desk in record time, and I just continued to watch him in a confused daze, until I assume an employee, who I couldn't see from my angle, greeted him. I could see his mouth moving, and then he turned to the stairwell pointing up. We made eye contact for a split second before I snapped out of it and quickly shuffled back to the sofa where all of our bags were. About a minute passes, and I'm silently begging for Corey and April to get back soon. It felt like an hour had passed since they had gone down to the bathrooms, but I checked my phone and saw that the whole encounter with the bizarre man had only lasted about 5 minutes. Another minute passes, and suddenly the stairwell door opens, and I look up, hoping to see my husband or best friend, but instead, I lock eyes again with none other than the blubbering man. He holds my stare for just a moment with a hard glare, face still red, then turns his head away from me and swiftly walks back out of the door he somehow got into from outside. Of course, like the stoned dumbbutt I clearly was at the time, I ended up watching him leave without realizing I was doing it. He glanced back one more time while passing through the doorway, saw me staring like a complete idiot, but instead of glaring now, he just looks embarrassed again. He mutters, "Sorry," so quietly that I'm still wondering if I imagined it or not, then practically ran out to his car. Only seconds after this guy leaves, Corey and April get back upstairs, laughing about something until they see my face. Corey immediately asks me what's wrong, and I do my best to explain that I had the weirdest "I don't work here" situation happen while they were gone. But most of what I'm describing makes no sense to them either. Even now, I have no clue what was going on with that guy exactly. Dude, if you see this post, I'm sorry if, in my blazed and confused state of mind, I embarrassed you. But really, man, I have no idea how you even began to think I worked there, considering how trashy I looked that day. My best guess is that this man was having a very bad or stressful day, and or has really bad social anxiety, which I completely empathize with. I want to add that if he does have a mental disability, I'm not shaming or making fun of him in any way. He wasn't exactly rude or anything, aside from the glaring. It was just incredibly unsettling and bizarre as heck, especially due to how high I was. I hope he's well, unless he really is some type of criminal, that is. Thanks for reading, and I apologize for the length of my post. I know many people get irritated at long stories on Reddit. This whole story is just one big trip, and it makes me wonder if OP took another edible before they wrote it, because it kinda seems like they might have. If OP can make an incredibly entertaining story that takes 13 minutes to read about somebody opening a wrong door and then finding out that they don't work there and just leaving, then I would love to hear them write some other stuff. What do you guys think? Comment down below. Our next story today comes to us from Nimenev. I Don't Work Here Lady, Strip Club Edition. Let's jump right in. This takes us back to the early 2000s. I was 19 at the time. My second job ever was at a shady accountant's office. I worked a couple of years as a courier and then was promoted to a small administrative role. It was a small office, but we handled a lot of work because we had a lot of clients. Our biggest was a chain store, big store, with headquarters overseas. We did the numbers for the local branches. This meant that big store would send a couple of times per year a representative that will stay a couple of days in a hotel, so we'd have to show them a nice time in town. One of these representatives, VIP, was a bit of a creep and demanded to go to nightclubs where we had to make sure he didn't get in trouble. Our country was always in the middle of an economic crisis, so the accountant would make us go above and beyond to keep the representatives happy and, in the case of this guy, drunk. During one of the VIP's visits, he heard of a strip club and wanted to go there at all costs. One of my coworkers took him there, and the VIP liked it so much that he practically never left the establishment. I don't know why, but he decided this would be the place of operations next time he'd come, and he managed to make sure a next visit would ensue as soon as possible. So a couple of months later he came, with short notice, and arranged with the accountant to have their meetings at the strip club. Mind you, this was still during working hours. Sorry for the long background, now to the I Don't Work Here Lady part. This went down during a meeting at said strip club at noon. We were sitting in one of the corner tables, away from most of the action. It was actually a pretty quiet place, all things considered, and given the nature of the talk, ill accounting practices, it surprisingly seemed like a good place. There were a few patrons next to the stage, and there was a little action, but there were dancers coming and going. It seemed like the place never closed. Accountant's personal assistant was a girl in her mid-20s. She was the accountant's niece, and she was both incredibly smart and beautiful. She was sitting next to her uncle, taking notes and providing data on demand. I was there just to make sure VIP always had a drink in hand. At some point, I was handed some documents to check something out, and personal assistant went to the bar to get more drinks. So the three males were sitting at our table, VIP and accounting talking figures, as I was checking the papers when suddenly we heard a loud crash and some yelling. We turned to see personal assistant arguing with drunk patron 1, her white shirt all wet. She then threw a punch at drunk patron 1's face, who was rocked back by the vicious hit and the surprise. Drunk patron 2 and drunk patron 3, who were nearby, jumped in and tried to grab personal assistant. We sprang from our seats and rushed to personal assistant's aid. There was some pushing and pulling. Accountant was trying to hold personal assistant back and shield her, but she was enraged. VIP and I were pushing the drunk patrons back. Fortunately, the fighting was contained between the personal assistant and drunk patron 1, and a full-blown skirmish didn't break out. A couple of seconds later, a massive 6'8" bouncer appeared, grabbed drunk patron 1, and started bellowing out orders. We instantly stopped as if we were toddlers under the command of a kindergarten teacher. Upon questioning, drunk patron 1 said that the expletive for a sex worker refused to serve him a drink and a lap dance, pointing at personal assistant. Still enraged, she started shouting and things almost escalate again, weren't it for the bouncer being so menacingly in control. The man was good at his job. Eventually, personal assistant calmed down and said that she was returning from the bar with a tray of drinks when drunk patron 1 slapped her in the butt and told her to take him to a private booth. She said she didn't work there, he slurred something about being quick about it, and when she tried to leave, he tried to grab for her chest and knock the tray with the drinks all over her suit and shirt. She told him something along the lines of, "I told you I don't work here, butthole." And he replied, "Well, you look like a," expletive for a sex worker, "that works here." She lost it and started swinging. Aftermath. Drunk Patron 1 was kicked out. Drunk Patron 2 and 3 left with his friend. VIP paid the bartender some money to allow us to stay there. I took personal assistant in a cab back to her home. Personal assistant was still fuming and ranted on how she hated working for her uncle and his shady clients. She wanted to quit and start working in her field. She was an architect, but our economy was so depressed, there was hardly any work there. She took a week off work after that, and during that week, I decided to quit. I was a high school dropout, and I thought it was a good time to get graduated, so I haven't seen her since. I learned that accountant was caught stealing from big client a couple of years later, and his business declined heavily after losing the majority of his business. A couple of years ago, I've seen personal assistant running a somewhat successful Instagram account, giving interior design tips and offering her services as an architect and designer. She seems to be doing okay. The strip club closed a long time ago, so I guess the drunk patrons are getting their fill elsewhere. Wait a second. Creepy uncle is bringing his niece into a strip club to do work. Does anybody else see a problem with this? That's like so messed up. I'm extremely glad to hear that she didn't get hurt because drunk people can be very unpredictable, but she needs to get away from this uncle permanently. Our next story today comes to us from Elfie Star, never wearing a black shirt again. Let's jump right in. Longtime lurker, first time posting. This story is long only because all these interactions happened in one day. For some reason, I've, 21 female, always been confused to work at places wherever I go since I was like 12. Be it at supermarkets, malls, or parks, someone always comes to me thinking I work there. This particular day, everywhere I went, people came up thinking I worked there. I work at the famous Green Apron coffee shop. Even though there isn't a set uniform, our dress code is typically a black shirt and some jeans. I just got off a 5 to 2 shift and was dead tired and annoyed with the customer interactions I had. Although all I wanted to do was go home and sleep, I had errands to run and planned to do shopping with my family. My first stop was to go grocery shopping with my mom as we were planning a family dinner for the weekend. I'm the shopper that goes to get what they want or need, while my mom is more of a browse shopper, so I was going back and forth from the cart to the different aisles to speed up the shopping process while my mom was browsing. I don't know where everything is at this supermarket, but I can read the signs and go from there. Since I kept coming back to my mom and dropping things off in our cart, this old lady that kept looking at me assumed I worked there. I would have helped any other day, but I didn't want to talk to anyone other than my mom, and I had my headphones on. As I was talking to my mom, the old lady asks me where something is. The interaction was in Spanish, so not everything would be translated word for word. "Girl, do you know where this item is?" I just quickly turned to her, "Sorry, I don't work here," and continued speaking with my mom and asking what else she needed. I can't really blame the lady for thinking I worked there given how I was asking my mom what she needed, but I wasn't wearing the green shirt and black apron the employees wear, and I had my headphones on. However, this lady was set on having me help her. I noticed the old lady watching me ever since me and my mom went inside the spices aisle, so I was able to see who was with her shopping. Since I didn't help her, the old lady sends her grown daughter to ask me a question. Once again I say, "Sorry, I don't work here." I didn't process that they were family yet until they sent their toddler and granddaughter to me. "Excuse me, do you know where this is?" I was getting quickly annoyed by this family not taking a hint, but I wasn't about to snap at the poor girl. Again I say, "Sorry sweetie, but I don't work here. Please tell your family to stop bothering me," and turn to my mom begging her to finish with her shopping. My mom looked at me disapprovingly for not helping this family. Before I can refute, I feel myself being grabbed by the shoulder and turned. This man I've never seen before angrily shouts at me, "Why are you only helping this woman and refusing to help my family? They even sent my 5-year-old daughter and you wouldn't help her." Even though all I wanted to do was scream and punch this guy for grabbing me roughly, I put on my customer service persona to defuse the situation. "Sir, I'm sorry that your family has confused me for someone that works here, but if you look for someone with a black apron, I'm sure they'll be glad to help you out. I'm shopping here with my mother and helping her out. Maybe if you do the same, your family wouldn't have asked me. Have a great day." And I forcibly grabbed my mother and the cart and fast walked out of that aisle. I was shaking in anger and anxiety. The family probably finally accepted that I didn't work there, cause I didn't see them again while we were in line. While on the car ride back, my mom told me that that man wouldn't have screamed at me if only I helped the old lady. I looked at my mom in disbelief, but chose to ignore her and not say anything. Putting that interaction behind me, I went to the mall with my twin brother and sister. Still wearing my black shirt and having headphones on, I went about shopping. We went inside the Disney store to buy a present for our niece. I was already done and paid for my present, so I was just looking around while my siblings were still deciding what to get. From the corner of my eye, I see this mom walking towards me, flagging me for my attention. I just look at her blankly, and then she registered I didn't work there. A simple sorry would have been fine, but she just had to put the blame of mistaking me for an employee on me. "It's just that you were wearing a black shirt. I thought you worked here. Maybe don't wear that so you don't confuse people." I just shrugged my shoulders and said, I don't care. Moving to different stores and buying things I wanted. I was the first one done with my shopping, so I asked my sister for the car keys so I can drop off my things. Looking for the entrance we came from, I was walking everywhere around this department store. This department store's uniform is black pants and a black shirt. Mind you, I have headphones on and carrying multiple bags. I'm walking towards the entrance where I think we parked. Two ladies are walking the opposite direction towards me, one in a wheelchair, the other pushing her. The one in the wheelchair snaps her fingers at me and starts to talk, but the one pushing her says something on the lines of, "Leave her alone, she doesn't work here." The one in the wheelchair then rudely questions, "Why would she be wearing a black shirt then if she doesn't work here? She needs to do her job. She's wearing a black shirt." Should I have ignored her comment and went my merry way? Absolutely. Did I say things and act a bit too far? Probably. But I was so tired and fed up of having these people speak to me so rudely and blame me for things I have no control over. I was off the clock and still had people screaming at me just because they thought I was a worker. I snapped at this lady. So I bent down to be at this lady's eye height. What am I supposed to wear then? I can't effing wear a black shirt now, cause you're too dense to see I don't work here. I got headphones on and carrying different bags from other stores. You know what? You look like you work here. You're wearing a black shirt, and you don't know where things are. Call your manager over here. You're a terrible employee. This lady just looks shocked and is gaping at me and stuttering. The other lady pushing her just looks down in embarrassment and mumbles an apology and rolls the woman quickly away. I just stand there taking deep breaths to calm myself down. Eventually, I find the car and just wait for my siblings to come back. Haven't worn a black shirt since then, aside from when I work, but I still get confused as an employee. I guess I just have the look of an employee everywhere I go. Now, one thing I don't get about all these I Don't Work Here Lady stories is why the people don't just grab the opportunity and give them really horrible advice or tell them that things are completely on the other side of the store when they're really not. You want to know where the paper towels are? Yeah, they're in the freezer with the ice cream. Our next story today comes to us from Yes It Matches. You have to work here. You're a woman. Let's jump right in. Let me start off with a few things. First, that I did in fact look like an employee. Second, although I am in my early 30s, I am often mistaken for someone just out of high school or a college freshman. Third, even though this happened literally an hour before I'm posting this, all quotes are to be understood as to the effect of and not exact wordings. Also, names have been changed to protect the guilty. My local hardware store is full of helpful hardware folks, which means there is not much of a uniform, but floor associates wear bright red vests and managers wear business casual with a name tag. I was wearing khakis, flats, and a cute red micro-plaid button up top. I was on my way home from a blissfully short day at work, so I figured it would be a good day to get some tools to make some simple repairs. and some materials for a remodel that my partner and I have going on in our second floor bathroom. I was trying to get a couple of items from the top shelf, but only being a touch over 5'4" tall, I have a little bit of an issue, especially since they are the last two on the shelf. I managed to get the first one batted into my hand, but the second one is pushed back just enough that I can't exactly reach it. Enter Jethro. Jethro walks over and with a "Let me help ya, missy," grabs the box I'm trying to reach and hands it to me. Thanks. I keep my praise short because I'm not sure if he is just trying to be a good guy and help me, or if he is of the train of thought that a woman does not belong in a hardware store, except to be a cashier or arm candy for their husband. He wastes no time removing any doubt. "I can't believe they would make you pull items and not let you have a step stool." "Oh, no sir, I don't work here," I start, only to be cut off by Jethro. "You have to work here, you're a woman. What else would you be doing in a hardware store?" Jethro says. "And why doesn't Jeb work here anymore? That old boy was one of the best, blah blah blah." I honestly toned him out at this point. I roll my eyes, figure I don't have time for this, and start to push my cart away from him. This spurs a bellow from the depth of Jethro's beer belly. "Don't you walk away from me, I'm a paying customer." I spin on my heels. "Listen here, Billy Bob, Joe, Danny, Frank. I understand your original confusion. Unfortunate fashion choice on my part. But I already told you I do not work here. Thank you for getting the blubs for me, but really I do not work here. I am here because I am remodeling my bathroom." I yell back at him. His tone instantly changed to this sickly sweet implied "bless your heart" with every line as he said, "Redoing your bathroom? Well, I just happen to be a contractor, and I can help you with all the permits," he says before giving me a long hard leer, like I was a gorgeous porterhouse steak cooked to medium rare and ready to be devoured. "And I'm sure we can come to an agreement that will make it both worth our whiles." Instant mouth vomit. Figuratively, of course. But before I can say or spew anything, enter the hero of our story, Ben. A few things about Ben. Ben is an imposing wall of muscle. Literally was a bricklayer for years before he retired and then agreed to help his friend, the owner of this store. Ben may look like he could rip the arms off a Sasquatch, but he is a gentle giant. Ben pulls a move straight out of the Karen handbook and clears his throat, getting both Jethro and myself to look over at Ben. "Jethro, you know darn well that Jeb was fired because he shared your misinformed, misguided, and misconceived notions on who should and should not be allowed in this store. This is the early 20s, but not the 1820s. I've had enough of your racist and misogynistic BS to last me a lifetime. Set your cart down and walk away. You are no longer welcome here," Ben said with barely concealed rage. Jethro started with the "but, well," and Ben cut him off with a curt and authoritative "No, you leave now or the police will come and make you leave." And with his ego massively deflated, Jethro left. I was able to finish my shopping without any further interaction, after Ben apologized a couple of times, and we did have a good laugh about the fact that I did look like an employee. I like these stories where the person who comes in to help is a big, burly built person, but they use their brain and they're super polite to handle the issue. I also want to mention that a lot of times, depending on who you talk to in a hardware store, they might have more knowledge about how everything in there works and what you need to get a job done than your average contractor. Seriously. Our next story today comes to us from I Catch You One. Lady snatches dinosaur model out of my hands. Let's jump right in. So I was heading to a toy store, name redacted for privacy's sake, because they had informed me that they had the new Coelophysis model made by Safari Limited. I didn't have that model in my collection, and I usually order my models there, and I have a good enough relationship with the store workers to let me know when a certain model on my list is available. Or sometimes I prepay them to have a certain item in stock, and they have always provided. So I go into the store wearing a red shirt because I felt like it, and normally the toy store workers wear red, but they have tags on, so you know where this is going. So I enter the store and ask if they have the Coelophysis, and they point me in the right direction, since in this case, it wasn't one of the models I prepaid them for. So I see the Coelophysis among other models, it wasn't the only one, and I get my hands on it. When I take it off the shelf, a lady says to me, "Oh, thank you, I can take it from here." I turn around and see this lady that looks like she's in her late 30s holding out her hand to me, expecting me to just plop the dinosaur in her hands. I was looking confused for a moment, and then she got frustrated and asked me if I was hard of hearing. I asked why she wanted me to hand over the model I wanted, and she asked what I meant. I was an employee. I suddenly got her assumption and told her that no, I don't work here. I was just a customer. She fumed and pointed out that I was wearing the same shade of red as the workers. I responded that red is not exclusive to this store, and if she would excuse me, I was going to purchase the Coelophysis. She then got intrusive and started asking, why would an adult collect dinosaur models? I responded that people are allowed to have hobbies and tried to move on. Apparently not satisfied with my answer, she blocked me and freaking snatched the Coelophysis out of my hands and went to the counter. I was about to shrug my shoulders and grab the spares, not wanting to escalate, until I realized that she had also taken the other Coelophysis models on the shelf. The other remaining models were of Brachiosaurus and Microraptor, by the way. A little bit infuriated by this, but keeping my calm, I went to the counter and asked her to give it back, and told the people at the counter that she had snatched the model out of my hands. They asked her if it was true, and she actually told the truth, but only because I was being a bad employee, lying about wanting the model for myself, and not providing good customer service. Now the counter workers, who had seen me enough times as a consistent buyer, pointed out to the lady that I wasn't a worker, and she got huffy. She then said that she was the proper purchaser because she was getting them for her kid, while an adult shouldn't be playing with toys. That maybe if I wasn't collecting them, I would properly become an adult. So one of the counter workers called the store owner, who came to ask what was going on. After explaining, he had a frown on his face and went to check the security footage. After seeing that she had snatched it out of my hands and had escalated the situation, he ordered her to give me my safari model or he would have her ousted from the store. Now the store owner is a big guy, so she withered under his gaze a bit and gave me my safari. I calmly thanked her. I really didn't want to have to deal with her any further, and the store people, but I will admit I did enjoy seeing her crumple at the sight of a very annoyed burly guy. And now I have a Coelophysis in my collection. Oh no, this lady has kids? I mean, with that attitude, she's gonna be teaching a whole other generation how to be a bunch of Karens. It also sounds like she's gonna be gatekeeping their hobbies, which really sucks for those kids too. There really should be a test for people to be allowed to be parents. Our next story today comes to us from Cat Got Your DM. I do work here, but not where you think I do, mister. Let's jump right in. So the whole thing happened a few days ago. Interesting detail, I am this company's CEO's daughter, but I got an internship through regular channels and HR, so no one knew it at the beginning. I will also be using present time because yes, on to the story. So I'm working away with another intern and I'm in the same office that the secretary works in. We are working on the new production line in the factory and I'm working out some database kinks. I made that database and I'm mighty proud of myself. Because the dress code for interns is non-existent and the company's dress code in general is pretty lax, I'm rocking a pretty blue skirt and an elegant black blouse. Also, I'm a blonde girl in her 20s. Suddenly, Mr. Karen barges in and starts to yell at me. I caught only parts of that, but it included the R word, secretary, dumb bee, etc. It took me a while to piece the whole story. Apparently, the guy was supposed to sign an important deal with a client, but someone, presumably the new secretary, made a mistake in the client's name typing it into the file, turning it into a curse word. I can't tell you the name of course, but it was like the client being Mr. Woer and someone typing in Mr. Whore by accident. So Mr. Karen is shouting at me, the other intern is pissing his pants, and I have no idea who this guy is. I don't work with people outside the production circle, clients, or anything. I just make the apps and databases that hold them. I try to tell him as much, but Mr. Karen's louder than me, and he says that I'm in big trouble, lost us a client, and other crap. I kept most of my cool as I worked in retail for a long while before. So you know, devils don't scare you anymore if you've been the assistant manager in hell. He says he's taking me to the CEO. So naturally, I go to the CEO's office. Mr. Karen comes in, all respectful suddenly, and starts explaining the situation. As he's about halfway through the first sentence, Dad, CEO, interrupts him and goes, "Wait, let me hear what she came to say first. She's working on the line starting on Monday, so everything has to be done today." Since I'm already there, I tell Dad about the issue with the system and the fact that we need to make a reboot that will make 2 other lines stop as well. He schedules the reboot for 6 p.m. the same day and sends me on my merry way. Mr. Karen started to get the picture because he didn't stop me when I went out. I hid in the toilet to write this stuff down for my friends and reported this guy's awful behavior on the way home. It turned out Mr. Karen was supposed to fill those things himself, but he pushed it onto a secretary and she misspelled the name in the document. Mr. Karen got a warning. Secretary got told not to accept documents from Mr. Karen anymore. He is to fill every single document himself, even those that usually would be secretary's responsibility. And I presume he met the real secretary at some point. I met secretary on Friday while rebooting systems for the new production line. Seems like a really cool person. She is also working the afternoons exclusively at this site, so you can't meet her before 5:30 unless you drive to the metalworking site. She also got a reprimand, tough as she did misspell a client's name, resulting in a curse word on official papers. So, I do work here, but not where Mr. Karen thought I did. Okay, hold up a second. So this guy used the R word, called you a dumb bee and more, and that wasn't cause for dismissal? Your dad's the CEO, what the heck went wrong there? Our next story today comes to us from Bell Zealous Ideal. I don't work here encounter gave me low-key image issues. Let's jump right in. I wasn't really top of my class in high school, which was some small average school, but I was smart enough to get into a top-tier university in my country. Now, this place was a huge culture shift for me. Granted, I met some brilliant, kind people who are still my friends 6 to 7 years later, but I also encountered a lot of privileged rich kids who were probably just legacy admissions. This happened in my freshman year. I'm not from a poor family, but compared to some of these kids, I may as well be. I didn't really care about the way I dressed before. My university doesn't have a very formal dress code. You can show up in a t-shirt or something like that, so long as you aren't showing so much skin, and if the shirt doesn't have any profanity or vulgarity. So naturally, I would wear a lot of t-shirts and leggings. They're cheap and comfortable. Now, a lot of other students wear nicer things, branded shirts, polos, khakis and loafers, that sort of look. I had a lot of unpleasant encounters with a certain type of student, if you know what I mean. Months after orientation, when I was heading to class in my joggers and a university t-shirt, coffee in hand, some wild dude bro in a "my parents are rich" outfit literally runs into me from behind. Like, how do you not see someone in front of you? As he ran into my back, I spilled my coffee all over my clothes. He sees this. He slows down, takes one look at me, and keeps going his merry way. He even shot me a look like I was inconveniencing him for some reason. Another time, in the university parking lot, I witnessed some other entitled student in his brand new Audi straight up run over another student's foot and just drive off. But now for the "I don't work here" story. One day me and some friends, were at the mall next to the university. We were in one of those specialty sports shops that sells expensive jerseys and sports equipment, when this other random student, he was wearing his ID card, sprints over to me and just suddenly starts talking to me. I'm really introverted, so this took me aback. He was in the stereotypical "my dad is rich" outfit, branded polo, khaki shorts, and loafers. He's asking if the shirt he has in his hands is original and if the price is final. I just say, "I guess so." He made a face like that doesn't sound convincing. Then he asks if they have any other sizes and where he can change. Then it clicks in my head. I don't know, man. You have to ask someone else. I don't work here. He seemed surprised and made another disgruntled face and just walked away. No apology or further contact. I think that was the first time I began to realize that how you dress really affects the way people treat you. I don't know exactly how to describe it. He wasn't overtly angry or rude when he talked to me, but he just sounded so bored and uninterested, like he was only giving me half attention and speaking to me was some sort of chore. It was really demeaning. The scowls and angry looks are just icing on the cake. I mean, these small encounters added up in my head, and I tried wearing slightly more presentable clothes by my second year. I mean, I know that all of those anecdotes I shared are the fault of entitled brats, but I was just so sick of seeing it and having it happen to me. I mean, to this day, I worry about how I dress because of those students. I graduated 2 years ago, but these freshman encounters still affect the way I see myself. Maybe I'm being sensitive, but the messed up part is dressing well actually did solve the problem. There were times I would be mistaken for a professor. I worked as a research assistant in my spare time, so maybe some of those students thought I was a professor because I hung out with professors and did some professor work. When people would bump into me, they'd apologize. It sucks how people treat you based on the way you dress. I hate this mentality because I don't really care for nice things. There was a time I used to because of university culture, but that mentality is so tiring, and I don't know how people can enjoy it. I just try to look presentable now, nothing fancy, but I still randomly get anxiety that someone will literally run over my foot, verbally berate me, or laugh at me in public. This last one also happened in freshman year, but I don't want to share the whole story. Because they think they are rich enough to do so, it's exhausting. I think this is just a known thing. Dressing respectfully will get you more respect. However, in this day and age, with all of the influencers and other drivel out there, I think the way we dress is quickly changing, and I kinda wish it wasn't. Our next story today comes to us from Fire Dancer. No, little one, I don't work here. Let's jump right in. I know this sub is full of entitled idiots, but I wanted to share a nice interaction of I don't work here. I hit a bullseye to pick up a few things after work. I was wearing a red t-shirt with white writing saying NECA and a mask with a kitty nose and whiskers, so it's not surprising that I was mistaken for a worker. When I approached the self-checkout, there was a mom with 3 kids next to me. One of the little girls started conversation with, "I like your mask. Do you work here? Do you like cats?" I do like cats. I have cats and help rescue kitties without homes, but I don't work here. Her mom was trying to shush her, but I wasn't bothered. My youngest is now almost 18. Chatty little ones generally don't bother me. "Where do you work? You look like you work here. It must be fun if you can wear kitty masks. I want to do it." "I'm an electrician." She installs lights. I do more than that. I also run wires to help the pixies get to the lights to turn them on. I do think it's fun. Pixies? Can I do it? You can do anything your little self wants to do when you grow up. We all finish at the same time and head out. I hear her yelling from about 75 feet away over loud cars, really good lungs. "Bye, cat lady. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being my friend too." I drove home smiling. That child has better manners than a lot of people I know. I guess that says a lot about the parents. Nice to have an uplifting story for once, but it can't last. Our next story comes to us from The Gaming Mage. Angry boomer argues with me while stealing the items I was in the middle of paying for. Let's jump right in. This happened about a year and a half ago now, just before COVID. I used to work in a restaurant. We had a deal with the local Aldi, supermarket chain in Big Europe that had moved to Australia in recent decades, where they'd ship in ingredients for us in bulk with a slight discount, and we'd order every 2 weeks and pay 50% in advance and 50% on pickup. Since they worked on a quota system, they loved us for it. On this particular day, I was going to make our fortnightly pickup. For some context, their uniforms in Aldi are a bright blue shirt with like charcoal trousers, shorts, skirt, etc. At the restaurant I worked at, there wasn't a uniform for back of house kitchen staff, only some guidelines, so I was wearing a bright blue t-shirt with some patterns on it. It wasn't collared like the uniform, but still blue. So there I was, chatting to the cashier, who by this point I was quite familiar with. She was pretty cute, and at the time, I was working up the courage to ask her out. So yeah, long chat, while she put through our massive order. Stacks of boxes of buttermilk, bags of flour, drinks, oil, etc. While we were chatting, I didn't notice the 50-year-old guy at the next checkout queue grabbing some of the boxes of Coke cans. I only noticed when the cashier pointed it out to me. So obviously I walked over and confronted him. I'd already worked 8 hours with another 6 ahead of me, so I wasn't about to take any of this BS. I asked him, "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing with those? They're paid for." To which he replied, "F off, kid. Paid for by who? Quit flirting with your girlfriend and get back to work." Now, I was raised to respect my elders and all, but this dude was the epitome of everything wrong with that generation. So I started going off on him that I didn't work here, and if I did, I wouldn't let him in the store. Don't even remember what I said from then on, since we were both yelling. Do know it was pretty colorful though. Eventually, the manager of the branch, who comes to help me load up so he can sort out the invoice, was called and had to drag us away from each other, so we didn't end up in a fist fight. Thanks to the cashiers, it all got resolved while I went and cooled off. By the time I got back in a few minutes after it was sorted and I could finish paying and load up. Pretty sure my old work still orders there to this day. Never did get that cute cashier's number because of COVID. Oh, come on, OP, it's not too late. March your butt back in there and get that number. You can do it. Life's too short to wonder what could have been. Our next story today comes to us from Certified Hood Classic. Angry man freaks out when he has to pay a ticket that I had nothing to do with. Let's jump right in. A little bit of background information. This happened a few weeks ago, but I just found this subreddit and thought this story worked perfectly for here. I work as a tourism counselor in a small town in Canada, situated near a national park. We share a building with Parks Canada so that they can provide information about the park and we can give information about the town. National parks have an admission fee, and if you don't pay the admission fee, you receive a reminder that you need to pay. If you do not pay, then the reminder turns into a ticket, gets sent off to a collection agency, and you have to pay a larger fine. I am able to deal with these tickets at my desk. In case of it getting too busy at the parks desk, this does not mean I have anything to do with these tickets. Let the story begin. It is 5 minutes before closing and I'm getting ready to shut down when a clearly distraught man comes storming up to the door holding a ticket in his hand. He gets to the door and realizes he does not have a mask, still required in Canada at the time. He goes back to his truck to get a mask and doesn't even put it on when he enters. My desk and the Parks Canada desk are situated across the room from each other, and Parks Canada desk is closest to the door. So typically, people will go to the Parks desk first, but of course, since I'm writing about this now, this gentleman came storming right up to my desk, yelling about his ticket. When he gets to my desk, he throws his ticket at my face, which ends up being a critical hit and leaves me at low HP. He then proceeds to let me know that he was going to throw the ticket out, but his girlfriend had convinced him to pay the fee. Keep in mind, this fee is only $10. I ask him the required questions so I can charge him the correct amount, and he starts yelling, saying, "I've been coming to this park for 15 years, and I've never had to pay an admission fee. This is BS. He asks how long we have been charging people to enter national parks, and I lean over so I can see the person at the parks desk who should be dealing with this lunatic and ask her how long. 1984, she says. This nice gentleman decides that me and the woman working at the parks desk are lying about this and gets fed up. After yelling at me a while longer about how stupid I am and how I shouldn't be working this job, he throws a $10 bill at my face, draining the last bit of HP I had, and storms off. The woman working at the parks desk proceeded to thank me profusely for dealing with him, as she should have been the one dealing with him. So the proper answer to this one, if you really wanted to be fun with it, would be, "Sir, can I have your address please?" And he'd kind of go, "Why do you want my address?" And you'd say, "Well sir, 15 years of you coming into the park, we need to charge you admission for that. So I'd like to send you a bill." If only it were that easy. The last story today comes to us from Ancient Educator 76. You're cleaning up wrong. Oh, how the turntables. Let's jump right in. I worked for Safeway for a little bit now, but I was at a Fry's grocery store, Safeway's natural enemy in the Southwest, carrying a handbasket of groceries, wearing a Suns jersey. I think Robert Horry, non-ironically though, people took it that way, so I obviously didn't work there. So anyway, this lady with a handful of kids drops a jar of Alfredo sauce, and it makes a surprisingly big mess of broken glass and sauce that's the same color as the floor. A lady right next to her says, "Oh, for Christ's sake," while I, out of pure grocer instinct, take my items, syrup, Bisquick, 6-pack of Bud, not Bud Light cause I'm a man, and make a border blocking off the broken glass. I was trained to do this by Safeway Corporate to block off dangerous situations with whatever I could until we could get a mop and bucket and signage. As soon as I start putting the stuff on the floor, oh for Christ's sake lady starts in on me saying, "What the F are you doing? You can't just do that, that's beer for Christ's sake." She loved that phrase evidently. Meanwhile, store employees are coming over while lady with kids is pulling glass out of her ankle and, oh for Christ's sake, stands there with her hand on her hip and her other hand extended, as if to say, "Look at this crap that just happened." I'm using the box of Bisquick to scoop the glass more centralized while blocking that side with my body. The store manager is there telling me, "Oh sir, you don't need to do that, we'll clean," then oh for Christ's sake pipes in, "That's exactly what I was trying." Then the manager interrupts her interruption by saying, "Look Mildred, we've already had this discussion, stop by my office, I'll be there in a minute." All the while the store manager is trying to make sure lady and kids are okay. Then, oh for Christ's sake, Mildred says, "Well, I'm obviously off the clock, but alright, I'll just don't come back except to drop off your name tags and scan card." I can't believe this. That butthole's cleaning it wrong. He didn't get a marker. He doesn't even work here. Ha, now she doesn't either. In a small update at the end, OP said, "Store manager wound up talking to me about how I learned to do that with spills and eventually asking me how Safeway was treating me, and 3 months later, I was given a shot at front-end manager. After incident report was finished, of course, that shard of glass wouldn't have gotten into the poor woman's foot if, oh for Christ's sake, Mildred didn't overreact." Well, judging by the fact that she got fired on the spot, I'd say this wasn't the first time that Mildred spoke her mind. Mildred, that's definitely an old Karen name. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.